It is day 54, and you're speaking with the Meeples Champion. You know, one of the great things about getting to have not only this channel, not only this collection, but having a game group is getting to games that years ago would never have been on my radar. Not because they weren't interesting to me, but because there was no way I could actually play them. At least not play them to the full capacity they were intended. But having a game group, a regularly meeting once a week group, really allows me to get to the table games that are large. Maybe not these giant, Twilight Imperium or Axis and Allies games that are 6 to 8 hours. Those have to be planned for. Those are once a year at most. But these games that are large-scale 3-hour games that at 2 or 3 players just would not feel the same. Well, this week I got to play a game for the first time. It's a game I've been wanting to play for a long time, and it's a game that I know the viewers who are watching today are all either interested of it or have played and are big fans. That game is Scythe. Scythe is a really interesting combination of mechanics. It's primarily a Euro / kind of a fighter game. It's not a classic, men on a map truly fighting it out game. Most of your meeples cannot actually compete in fights against each other. But the idea of the game is that you get your faction, and then you also get a random additional half of the faction. Everything's dealt out in combinations. It's completely random. And these things help decide, okay, where are you going to start when it comes to your popularity, when it comes to your warfare ability? What is your card you're going to get? What is it that your pieces are trying to advance in? What are your special abilities? The game is definitely big. And I think that the biggest part of it for me is being able to say, all right, we have these technically warfares going on, but it's really not about the war. It's about the stars. So the game plays that no matter what you're doing, there are different ways to get a star. There's a star chart up the top. I believe there is 10 or 12 different possible ways to get a star. Whenever you achieve one, you move a star over. At the end of the game, it's activated when somebody gets their 6th star. And when I say activated, I mean activated and done. Somebody gets their 6th star, their turn ends on the spot, nobody else takes turns at all, end of game. Now you go in and you start counting up all your points. The stars themselves count as points, but your popularity also gives you this factor of, all right, well, you were on the first quadrant, so your stuff's only worth, say, a star is worth 3 points. Compared to the second quadrant, it's worth 4. Compared to the third quadrant, it's worth 5. Everything is like this, where depending on where that popularity fell, it decided what your things were going to get counted at for points. So it's a really interesting game. I want to dive right into it and discuss all these 7 categories. I'm only going to be able to do so much, but hopefully I can do some justice and help decide out there for those of you who haven't played if this is a game worth your time. So off the bat, art. The art of this game is fabulous. This feels like, I guess, art of maybe like a 1920s type vibe. And I think that the box sells the feel, the theme. I think that everything in the cards, in the board, in your pieces, everything sells this theme. It is really, really good. I give it a giant thumbs up. It's one of my favorite arts I've seen so far in all the videos I've done. Your components. The components, there's a lot of them. You have cards. Like everything, these cards are going to hold up. They're not flimsy. They got a good shine to them. They're not going to wear. Then you've got your player pieces, your stars, your little blocks, your round blocks, your 4 different buildings. These are all wooden. They're going to last long term. There's not a worry here. Then you've got your mechs. These are all plastic pieces, these little minis. They're really cool. I really like them. It's not overdone. It doesn't feel like they've overdone it by having too much. There's just 4 mechs per person. And then there's your actual player, which is another mini. These are a little bit more of a better plastic. And yet again, just a really nice piece that comes into the board and helps to enhance this game. I think the components are a giant thumbs up. Your price. This game's pricey. I mean, if you can find it for 60, you're doing well. I think this is more of a 70 range game. But it's a big game. We know that. What are you getting? Well, let's first talk about where you're getting it from. You're going to find this in every board game store. If they don't have a Scythe on the top shelf somewhere, I mean, they should have one. It's really unlikely you're going to find a place that doesn't have it. You're going to find this in most of your Barnes and Nobles. I find that Scythe is sitting on the bottom shelf a lot of time. It's a popular title. Your Target's unlikely. I don't think I've ever seen a Scythe there. I don't expect to. When you're breaking into the box is giant. There's so much game here. And what I like is they've already prepared for the expansion in the initial game. So when you get this game, the map itself already shows 2 more factions that are intended to be there one day that just had not been included. So you can use the original map. And if you flip over the board, they actually have half of the map there in a much bigger font. And it looks like, I haven't seen the expansion yet, it looks like the whole point is that you're probably not going to have to pay as much for the expansion. And when you get it, you're going to get the other half of that map, allowing you to really make a giant map, and that being a much more entertaining way to like get out there on the board. I'm actually excited to get the expansion, not necessarily to go 6 or 7 player, not necessarily to play with those other factions, but because of this like great lure they threw out there of look at the size map you could be playing on. Really cool. But you jump into all the pieces between your components, your different cards, the length of game. It's worth the $70. I think that if you are really out there looking for a game that's, trying to price it out, it's always hard to say, oh, this is worth $50, this is worth $30, that's worth it for $30, but it's not worth it for $50. This is worth it for $70. It's a big game. You're not getting this out there for people at every table. So you have to really think about if you want it. But those of you who are into this style game, you're going to get lots of games in that $70 range. This is worth it. Difficulty. I was surprised. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Now, for the record, I got crushed. 4 of us played. I think the winner had like 88 points. I think third place was somewhere in the 60s. I was in the 30s. Now, it's all because my last turn, I had it already prepped, and it was going to be like a 28-point turn. It was hugely planned out, but because of that setup of it ended the instant somebody got their 6 star, I didn't get the opportunity. So either way, even though my score was low, it was my first game, I didn't mind. Everybody was playing their first game, but 2 people at the table actually owned it, meaning they've had chances to look at the game, and the third person's a maniac. They know what they're doing. So for me, this game was difficult, but not in a way where I couldn't play. There are 2 ways to judge difficulty, in my opinion. I've told you this many times. The first is, can you play? I was able to. Immediately, I was able to say, okay, I'm going to jump over here. Your setup, if you've ever played Villainous, it's much like that, where you have 4 different places you can go to in the game. And when you go to one, the next turn when it's your turn to go, you move that 1 meeple to one of the other 3. You cannot repeat turns. So you jump to a spot, and then you do the top action, and then if you're able to, you do the bottom action. You cannot do them out of order. You have to go top, then bottom. So, I'm going through, and I'm able to make my moves. I'm able to advance on the board. I was able to have a plan. I felt competitive. And then the end of the game came, and the score caught me. Now, 4 of us playing our first game. 3 of them were very respectable. It was me that was way off. So I think that shows, hey, we all had a great time. And the person who did the worst, me, really enjoyed the game. Difficulty was not an issue for me. I think anybody should be able to play this game at an expert level and an intermediate level, and even at a beginner level, I think somebody could sit down and play the game and have a good time. They probably will get crushed like I was, but that's fine. It's to me, it's more about, can you enjoy it? Replayability, we already picked this game for next Monday. The person after that is probably picking it as well. So yes, it's replayable. It is not replayable on the same day, but I think it is a game that when you get into it, you might pick it a bunch of times in a row for weekly or even monthly. High thumbs up on the replayability. Keys to victory. So there are many ways to get points. And then there's that popularity track. It's interesting because normally I would say if you have to do something, it's not worth it in the game. Now we only played 1 game, so I don't know that it's worth it. But to me, it seems that popularity track has to be done. For me, I didn't have a high popularity track. The person who won had it in the highest level, so they were getting much more points per everything. The other two people who were above me were in the second level, and I was in the third level. So I was getting the fewest points for all the stuff I did. That being said, the popularity track doesn't give you points. It just decides how everything else points out. So it's important, but not by itself. If you do nothing else, you're not going to get any points. So I don't think this takes away from your keys to victory. I think that this is great because it is required. You need to pay attention. At the same time, you can't ignore the other things because if you do nothing else, you're not going to get points. I think that they found a really interesting way to find a way to make something be required, and yet at the same time, it is not ruining that keys to victory element. Thumbs up. Unique. I have to give it unique. I have to. Yes, you are mimicking so many other things. These battles on a hexagonal fight, the different armies, the fighting, getting resources. But I find that the fact that not every single meeple can fight, you're talking about you've got 1 hero, 4 mechs, and 8 worker meeples. The 8 worker meeples can do nothing in a fight. So you only can fight with your 4 mechs and with your faction meeple. And you only start with a faction meeple. It's not easy to get a mech on the board. So fighting, it's definitely encouraged. You get your first two of your stars you can get are for winning a fight and winning a second fight. But after that, you don't get any more stars. So it's encouraged, but it's not required. And I think that the track for the popularity is extremely unique. And I think the track for your fighting, so you have a track down the bottom. It goes to 16. And this is where when you're going to a fight, basically you go, okay, I have got each of my different things that are joining the fight. By having at least one, I get to use my fighting number at the bottom. Now, you can use up to 7 of it. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, the fighting number reduces by that much no matter what. And then for each mech and hero, you get to use 1 card per each of them for your different fighting number. Those numbers can be from 2, 3, 4 to 5. The 2s is like 16, the 5s is only like 4. So when you randomly get these cards, this is going to be a big factor in determining who wins. I find it to be a very cool way to do it because, like, for instance, with me, I won the one fight I was in and I crushed my opponent because even though I had gone very light on the cards, I only did it because in my first draw of cards, I drew a 5. And I went, wow, I've only drawn 3 cards, but I got a 3, and a 5. I didn't get any 2s and I got a 5. So I was like, I'm good. I can go compete. The likelihood of them also having cards of this level are pretty low. And they're not going to judge that I'm a competitor because of how few cards I had. They didn't think I was a threat. So overall, what do I think of this game? I love this game. I think that this is a game that is a must play. I think that if you have a chance to get it to the table, have a chance to find somebody who has it, go and play it. And the more players, the better. I think that at 4, it was fine. I really enjoyed it. I would love to get it out at 5. Is it a must own? No. I think this game is really big, really expensive. And if you have a friend who already has it, you're good. I want to try to get this to the table with family or other friends just to see. Because if any of them like it, I would buy it on the spot. I love the game. I really want it in my collection. But in my group of 5 of us who play on Mondays, 2 of them already own this game. I don't need it there. So unless I know I can use it elsewhere, I can't really get the game, even though I really want to buy it. Well, this has been day 54. We have been speaking about Scythe, and you've been speaking to the Meeples champion. Like, share, subscribe, and check down below where I'll be adding in an Amazon link to go and buy this game. I'll talk to you all tomorrow.